Hello, and welcome to the 17th episode of the Students for Criminal Justice Reform Board podcast. I am your host, Marissa Mack. Today we have with us MTA Police Deputy Inspector Tim Denmark. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show. So, tell us a little bit about how you became involved with the MTA Police.
Recruiter's office on my 18th birthday to military police. Spent some time with them. Then I went to Pace University. I got my criminal justice degree. I started taking police exams, and I took the police exam then it was the Metro North Police. I didn't really know anything about them. Hired by them in 1989 and haven't looked back. Job. I've learned an awful lot and been around and seen a lot.
That's great. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the difference between the MTA Police and the NYPD. So you presented at Community Board 11 about 2 months ago, and there were a number of people who were somewhat shocked to know that the MTA Police and the NYPD are not directly connected. Can you talk a little bit about how the two agencies are different and how they're similar? What are the MTA Police dealing with that may or may not overlap with the NYPD?
Sure. The MTA is a state agency, so the MTA Police, we're actually state employees, whereas the NYPD, they're employees of the city. The MTA Police is a full-service police department. We are police officers under the criminal procedure law, just as NYPD, any local police agency are. But our mission is really geared toward the transit system. Police authority throughout the state, just like any other police officer does. We actually have a little more than most police agencies, because a police officer's, it's called his geographical area of employment, is defined by who hired him. New York City police officer, his geographical area of employment is the 5 boroughs. Since we've been hired by the MTA, our geographical area of employment is actually the 12 counties of what's known as the Metropolitan Commuter Transportation District. 5 boroughs: Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Rockland counties in New York, Police Authority in Connecticut, in Fairfield and New Haven counties. Areas that are serviced by Metro North Railroad, Long Island Railroad, and Staten Island Rapid Transit. We have the same general arrest authority, but we can make arrests for minor violations anywhere in those New York and 2 in Connecticut, whereas the local municipal police, they really only have the authority to make arrests for those minor violations in their own jurisdictions.
So speaking on the fact that you are both the NYPD and the MTA Police are able to write tickets and issue certain summons and violations, there has been a lot of discussion now around low-level crimes, jumping turnstiles, littering, playing loud music, more or less like broken windows policing. How do you feel the MTA Police are dealing with some of these issues now? Are they cutting down on the number of summons and tickets, or are you looking for alternative ways to address these issues, being that it's something that is a huge topic right now, and there is a feel that maybe there's not as much need for some of these summons or tickets, if you will, as maybe previously?
Well, we do address those low level, what they call low level quality of life type violations: open containers, public urination, littering, smoking, unlawful possession of marijuana. All of those low level we can enforce. We do. I know that the NYPD has changed some of their direction there and has kind of scaled down on the hard enforcement of a lot of. It's still unlawful behavior. It hasn't changed. It's just the the choice of where to invest that effort. We have not been involved in reducing that effort. We still enforce all of those rules and regulations. New York City has the administrative code, which is where a lot of those things are found. The open container law, New York City admin code, a lot of the public urination, a lot of those minor quality of life things there. So we can enforce those. We also have MTA has their own rules and regulations. There's different sections for Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and the transit system. We still are enforcing them. We have not stopped, reduced our focus on those. We feel that it is important it's that sense of order and maintaining order in the system. It's an important tool for us. Although we are looking, where we look to do alternative things is when they get to court. So we don't change our policing strategy in terms of enforcement, but we do look for alternatives at court.
So what are some of those alternatives that you may look for in a court setting or at court?
We have looked for restitution, have the courts, instead of a sentence of a fine or even imprisonment, we've looked for restitution. We have a program out on the Long Island side where we have it's called the Tracks program, and it's more of a community awareness information, but they'll take graffiti, trespass, some minor criminal mischief, and the court will sentence them to work to help clean up the graffiti or clean up. Those are some alternatives to fines, alternatives to threatening them with jail time or probation for some of these. So we've found that to be effective.
And I think that's great. I've actually studied and actually did a podcast on bail reform and money bail reform and the harms for both the individual and the families involved. And so looking for other ways to, either lessen the summons or, look for alternatives to what will happen after someone gets a ticket or a number of tickets or fines is great, and it's a great way to look at the situation and move it in a different direction. So it's good to hear that the department is looking for different ways to look at these issues and deal with them. So that's great to hear. So thinking about the MTA, I guess, workers and the police, how do you work together? Whether it be through Metro North, the subways, the buses, how do the MTA and the police workers work together? Obviously, their main goal is to keep riders safe. But what are some of the ways that you kind of look at the situation and say, the workers are on the ground every day, the bus drivers, the train conductors, and, the MTA police are more or less covering the entire atmosphere, if you will. So how do the two areas work together to keep riders safe?
Well, they're an important part of the overall strategy of public safety and awareness. Just to be clear, the MTA police, we don't police the subways. Those subways are still being policed by NYPD. So, but looking at them as well, there's 47,000 New York City Transit employees. 3,700 with buses. So that's an awful lot of people. Between Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and Staten Island Rapid Transit, there's 13,000 employees. That's a lot of eyes that are out there watching. One of the strategies they use is having, even for these, just having that distinctive uniform, seeing transit employees in the orange vest, seeing conductors in a distinctive uniform, even station cleaners in a distinctive uniform, gives that impression that there's someone in authority who's watching. The power to act, they're watching. Cleaners, the clerks, the conductors, they see the same people every day, day after day. They know exactly who's a regular and who's a stranger in the system. Around the transit system, you can tell the tourist a mile away. You know, the people who are just all business, they got their head down, they're moving from place to place. But these employees, they see everything, they're everywhere. And so they're a huge piece of what we do. So our communication with them and our relationships with them are very important, because we can't be everywhere at once. And even a uniform officer, uh, everyone sees them. So if there's someone there who's planning to do something wrong, or even from the terrorism aspect, if they're there watching, observing, trying to get routines, when they see the uniform officer, they mind their business. And as soon as the uniform officer's away is when they start to act. But what they don't know is there are also employees there who may see them and can provide the description, provide the time, and exactly what it was that happened. So using those employees to help us and get that message out to them of the piece they play in that is tremendous.
So it seems like all eyes are watching at some point in time, whether it's the MTA police or the MTA workers. Everyone is more or less working together to ensure the safety of riders day in and day out.
That's a strong message that we put out, and it comes down to the individual officers developing relationships with the employees also. You know, when you say hello to the cleaner and the conductor every day, the ticket clerk, then they're not just a strange face. You know, after a while, then you know them by name. Then you start chit chat to talk to you. So it's really years law enforcement is really a customer service type of business. Um, that when I was a younger police officer, but it's all about relationships. It's all about meeting people, talking to people, and they're willing to talk to you when they know that you have a good word for them.
Tim, that's interesting you say that. The relationship building portion of what you just stated, does that also reflect in the community as well? So I know there are, obviously you presented at Community Board 11, which was great because I don't remember in recent times where we've had a representative from the MTA police come in and just talk about the changes and the ways that you've been able to work within East Harlem and within the community overall. But in terms of that communication and in terms of that development, how are you working with the community? So not just, you know, the MTA workers, but also the people that are within the communities that you serve. How are you connecting to them, and what role do they play in policing?
Um, they just like the employees, they see everything. I can tell you from the standpoint of commuters, and that's kind of our community. It actually is a community. You know, we see the same people commuting every day, day after day. When I was an officer on patrol, I would see the same commuters pass by me every day, you know, on their way to work, on their way home, and you start to talk to them too, and you know, a smile, a nod, and next thing you know, you started a conversation with somebody. See things. Again, they see the things that we don't see when we're not around. A lot of times they're reluctant to talk to the police, but if you could build that relationship with somebody, they'll tell you anything. They'll tell you even what you didn't want to know. Vendors also, the little shop owners, the coffee shop inside the station at 125th Street. You know, there's over 80 vendors here in Grand Central Terminal. Store owners. So this really is the transit system is its own unique community. You can't do it without them.
That's right. That's true. And so I think I would like to know a little bit more about an initiative we spoke about previously, that the MTA Police is working on regarding the homeless population, which unfortunately, because of a number of different factors, you know, rising rents, you know, affordable housing or the lack of affordable housing, jobs, the homeless population in New York City is rising. And so what is the MTA police working on now with that population to help service them, you know, as the population is on the rise?
Well, I don't remember if I had mentioned it when I spoke at the community board, but we have created a homeless assistance unit. We have a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 7 police officers, and their dedicated mission every day is doing homeless outreach. As well, we've started recently, within the last 2 weeks, we've started another larger initiative where we're bringing extra officers in and teaming them up with the BRC, which is our outreach partner that the MTA is contracted with. So if you're familiar with the incident command system, as a task force of police outreach and station cleaner, and they'll go place to place and they kind of address all of the immediate problems. If there's an enforcement issue to be handled, the police are right there. If there's an outreach issue to be handled, the outreach worker is right there. Issue with garbage, litter, the area's not clean, not being well maintained, there's a station cleaner right there who can either clean up immediately or call for a more detailed cleaning to be done. So far, it seems to be a success. We've seen more homeless people accepting services before, and I think part of that is because the outreach workers are there with them. It's not just, the police are here again just to move me along.
Right.
There's
And
an outreach worker there who can say, okay, well, what is it exactly that you're in need of? Here's who we can call. We can transport you right now to a shelter or to a center where they can help you.
and the outreach personnel that are working with you, do they also have familiarity with social services, mental health, and other areas, other services that may not be, forthcoming by the individual?
Yes, the BRC, they're well equipped. They have a lot of contacts with hospitals, with social services. Um, they have the shelter. They know where all the shelters are. They maintain several shelters themselves. Just having them right next to the officer at the time of the encounter, I can't even tell you what that is to the officers when they come across. Because I think we'd spoken a little bit about this. It's very difficult. It's not against the law to be homeless. It's the law to smell bad. Um, it's not against the law to stand up and just stand on a corner or stand against the wall all day long. So our enforcement options are limited. So we need more. The police, as I've told people, I have a little hammer and a big hammer, and that's about it. We bring to the picture is only a small piece of it. It's what the outreach workers bring to it that a lot of times makes the difference.
So in speaking, you have a big hammer, you have a little hammer, you have resources. Do you think there's anything else that may help in your day to day? So you've taken on this task force, you've taken on, the homeless situation, and you've included other people who can assist in your analysis of a situation. Are there any other tools or any other agencies you would like to see the MTA police partner with to help you do your job to the best of your capacity or your capabilities?
We've been working with the courts, as I said, not just in some of those low level offenses, but also with some of our chronic homeless. Public intoxication is a huge issue for us. Just this year alone, from the 125th Street station, we've taken 161 people as intoxicated, where they're intoxicated to the point where they can't care for themselves. 161 people. That's almost one every 2 days. 25th Street Metro North Station is
And
being sent to the hospital.
intoxication, can you just define that? That's not, does it include substance, or is it just alcohol? What's
It's
under that
both.
umbrella?
The bulk of when we send people to the hospital is intoxicated by alcohol, but it's an intoxication. You're unable to care for yourself due to intoxication, either by drugs or alcohol. These are not the overdoses. They're almost exclusively alcohol related. 161. That's a huge
That's a
burden
lot.
on the system from top to bottom. The police, it's a burden on EMS because that's an ambulance out of service. How long it takes them to get them in, get them a quick set of vital signs, and get them assessed, and then take them to the hospital. So that's a hospital. That's an ambulance that is not available for the genuine medical emergency. The person who's having a stroke, the person who's having a heart attack, the person who's had an accident, and now they're bleeding heavily. Because it's taken 161 people to the hospital for being intoxicated. So one of the things
Just
we
just on
want to do
125th Street
from that
alone.
one station,
That
the
one
Metro North
station.
station.
Yeah, that Metro North station. Can I ask you a question? Because, as a board member, we've discussed the fact that East Harlem has a huge number of, I guess we take on our share of assistance of individuals, I guess from New York City. So there are a lot of rehab, there are a lot of social services in our area, which we love. But it would be nice to kind of spread these services out throughout the city. Do you think that that would have any impact on the number of individuals, who are arrested for intoxication on 125th Street, just in that station? Do you think that that would have any effect or any change on those numbers?
If there were more services spread out, then people wouldn't be drawn there. I'm sure you know that in the Lee building right next to 125th Street Station, there are 2 methadone clinics. So that draws people who are there for their methadone maintenance treatment. By the way, I've seen people there that I saw coming there when I was a rookie police officer 29 years ago. These are people with a lifetime of dependency, and they come there, and when they're not getting their methadone treatments, for things to satisfy that dependency. So yes, if there were more services spread out, then I guess the volume of people who were coming to 125th Street and Park Avenue, they may go somewhere else.
Right, yeah.
Which is good for Community Board 11, maybe not good for the adjoining community board.
Well, I think that's another discussion because, I guess concentration of anything in a certain area is not always the best solution, and that everyone throughout New York City should kind of do their part. But I think that's a separate discussion, another podcast, completely.
I don't think either you and I are going to solve that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it is interesting to hear that number and hear that is not necessarily the number at other stops, right? So, just an interesting fact. So I want to leave our viewers with some tips and some ways in which they can also, I guess, get involved and know how to contact the MTA police if they are in need, if they're on Metro North or they're around certain stations, or what they can do to kind of help in the efforts that the police agency has going on currently.
Okay, well, you can contact. We are not MTA Police, just as it's more of an administrative issue. We're not a 911 receiving agency. So, in other words, if you dialed 911, you won't get the MTA Police. In New York City, you'll get NYPD. Refer calls to us sometimes, but there's an obligation to handle a 911 call, so they may dispatch a New York City police officer as well. But if you call 911, the first person that answers that phone will not be the MTA Police. We get that call, but it won't be us to begin with. We have an emergency number, have a general number. The emergency number is 888-9117. The general number is 212-878-1001. You can contact us on the web at mta.info. We actually have a Twitter page that we just started recently in New York at MTA PD, which I guess is probably the quickest way.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something you see, if there's something a rider sees, tweet that to it's monitored, and we'll respond to it. We'll either have officers come or we'll respond back to the person. The railroads also, both Metro North Long Island Railroad, they're very, very sensitive to customer issues, and they have customer complaint numbers and online, and I get those constantly referred to us as a customer complaint. Usually if it's about quality of life issues, it may start as a customer complaint to the railroad, and then it gets referred to the police. So the ways that you can get in touch with us, the MTA Police have the web page on the MTA website with the phone numbers of all of the individual districts where you're riding. There's an MTA Police district that services that area, and they can be reached by phone.
Okay, that's great to know. Is there anything else that the MTA Police is working on right now that you like for our listeners to know about? Anything coming up, or just any other information you'd like to share?
Well, the homeless issue is in the front of everybody's consciousness right now. That you see it all the time. So that's a big push of what we do. But we also, we have another mission, and that's to crime and terrorism is never far away. Has been identified clearly by groups as a soft target. It's a large gathering of people. You can read in the paper and online all the time about terrorist attacks where they're looking to target large groups of people. 18 million people a year, so that's a lot of people. So we are involved in that. We do have initiatives to watch, as well as the crime prevention piece of traditional policing. So working hard, and we have officers out there that are doing their best to keep people safe, whether it's just preventing and addressing quality of life, crime, terrorism.
That's great. So thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. And, we'll be able to share this information with our viewers and listeners on our YouTube page. And again, just thank you for participating and have a good evening.
Great, Marissa. Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay. Good night.